Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to understand and describe the historical development of cricket as a game in England. Understand and explain how the organisation of cricket reflected the society in Victorian England. Understand and describe why cricket remained a colonial game. Understand and describe the race and religion-based cricket in India. Understand and describe the cause of India's early participation in Test cricket. Understand and describe the process of decolonization of cricket. Understand and describe the major transformations in the game of cricket in the 1970s. The historical development of cricket. Cricket is one of the many stick-and-ball games played in England 500 years ago. By 17th century, it evolved as a distinct game. One of the peculiarities of Test cricket is that a match continues for 5 days and still ends in a draw. No other game takes as much time to complete. Another peculiar feature of cricket is that the size of pitch is specified, 22 yards. But the size or shape of the cricket ground is not specified. Till the middle of 18th century, the cricket bats were curved at the bottom. The first written laws of cricket, drawn up in 1744, stated that umpires would be the last authority to decide all disputes. They also specified the height of the stumps, length of the bails, weight of the ball, and the length of the pitch. The world's first cricket club was formed in Hambledon in the 1760s, followed by Marylebone Cricket Club, MCC, in 1787. In 1788, the MCC published its first revised version of laws, which became the guardian of cricket's regulations. One immediate change the revised laws brought about were replacement of curved bat with a straight one. The cricket tools still reflect their English origins. The bat is made of willow wood. The ball is made of leather, twine and cork, and both are handmade. Introduction of protective equipments like pads, gloves, and metallic helmets is of recent origin. Cricket and Victorian England. The organisation of cricket in England reflected the nature of English society. The rich who played for pleasure were called amateurs or gentlemen, and the poor who played for money were called professionals or players. The rich were amateurs because they upheld the aristocratic value that a game was played for the sake of playing and not for money. Amateurs clearly were socially superior. They had separate entrances to get into the field. They were mostly batsmen. Bowling, the hard-working aspect of the game, was left to the professionals. Another fact that established the superiority of the amateurs was that the captain of the team invariably happened to be an amateur. Not because he had better skills, but because he was a gentleman. In 1930, the English Test team, for the first time, was led by a professional, the Yorkshire batsman Len Hutton. It is often said that the Battle of Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton. It means that Britain's military success is attributed to the values taught in their public schools. Team games like cricket and rugby are credited for instilling the value of discipline, hierarchy, code of honor, and leadership qualities in the students. These qualities helped to build and run the British Empire. The spread of cricket. English team games like hockey and football have become international games, but cricket has largely remained a colonial game. It is played mostly in countries that were once a British colony. Cricket became popular through the white settlers in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Australia, New Zealand, the West Indies, and Kenya, and through the local elites who felt superior playing a game of their colonial masters. The British had no efforts to popularize cricket in colonies like India and West Indies, where the subjects were non-whites, yet the game became hugely popular in the Caribbean. Playing and excelling in cricket became a sign of self-respect, superior social and racial status, and international standing among the natives of the colonies. The first non-white club in the West Indies was established towards the end of the 19th century. The West Indies won its first Test series against England in 1950. It was celebrated as a national achievement to send signals that West Indians were equal to the white players. A national team was given the right to represent India in a test match for the first time in 1932. Cricket, race, and religion. Cricket in India was based on race and religion. The first Indian club, the Calcutta Cricket Club, was formed in 1792. Though the British believed that Indians had no talent for cricket, the Indians proved otherwise. The first Indian community to play cricket was the small community of Zoroastrians, the Parsis. In 1848, Parsis founded the Oriental Cricket Club in Bombay, the first Indian cricket club. Parsi clubs were funded and sponsored by Parsi businessmen like the Tatas and the Wadias. The Oriental Cricket Club beat the all-white Bombay Gymkhana at cricket in 1889. In the same year, the Parsis built their own Gymkhana to practice. The Parsi Cricket Club set a precedent for other Indians. By the 1890s, a Hindu Gymkhana and an Islam Gymkhana were established. Cricket began to be organized on communal and racial lines. First-class cricket tournaments, called quadrangular, were played by 4 teams: the Europeans, the Parsis, the Hindus, and the Muslims. By the late 1930s and early 1940s, journalists, cricketers, and political leaders like Mahatma Gandhi began criticizing the racial and communal foundations of the pentangular tournament with 5 teams. It was a colonial tournament and ended with the colonial rule in India. The modern transformation of the game. Modern cricket is dominated by tests and one-day internationals played between national teams. Indian cricket fans still remember players from the days of pentangular and quadrangular matches whose career lasted a considerable duration. C.K. Naidu, an outstanding batsman, was one such player. He is remembered for his fine cricketing skills, as well as for being the first Test cricket captain of India. Others, like Palwankar Vithal and Palwankar Balu of the same era, despite being fantastic players, have been forgotten because their careers lasted a short span of time. India started playing Test cricket in 1932. It was almost a decade and a half before India gained independence from Britain. The first Test cricket was played between England and Australia when Australia was a British colony and not a self-governing dominion. The small countries of the Caribbean made up the West Indies team when they were British colonies. Decolonization and sport. The process of decolonization started in different parts of European empires after India became a nation independent of the British rule in 1947. Hereafter, the process continued for almost half a century. Decolonization resulted in reduced influence of Britain in trade, commerce, military affairs, international politics, and sports. Despite Britain's declining influence, Imperial Cricket Conference (ICC) remained at the helm of affairs for long, regulating the international cricket. The ICC was renamed the International Cricket Conference in 1965. Yet, it was largely dominated by its founding members, Britain and Australia. The two countries enjoyed veto power over its different proceedings. Their privileged position was abolished in favor of equal membership in 1989. In 1950s and 1960s, England and other white Commonwealth countries continued to play Test cricket with South Africa, a country that followed apartheid policy. It did not allow a non-white to represent its country as the team captain. Non-white cricket-playing nations like India, Pakistan, and West Indies did boycott South Africa but did not have power enough to get South Africa debarred from Test matches. Commerce, media, and cricket today. The decade of 1970 saw many transformations in the game of cricket. The first one-day international was played between England and Australia in Melbourne in 1971. Even if 1977 celebrated 100 years of Test matches, the shorter version of the game had caught up people's imagination. In the same year, an Australian television tycoon, Kerry Packer, changed the game forever. While Packer's World Series cricket wound up in 2 years, he made cricket more attractive to the television audience and changed the nature of game radically. Coloured dresses, metallic helmets, floodlight cricket were some features of Packer's cricket. Packer conveyed that cricket was a marketable game which could earn huge revenues. Cricket reached small towns and villages and expanded the audience for cricket. Multinational companies created a global market for cricket. The spread of cricket. Since India has the largest audience base and the largest market for cricket in the world, South Asia came into focus. The headquarters of ICC are in Dubai, the capital of United Arab Emirates. This shift in power was visible in other things also. The Dusra and reverse swing techniques of bowling, more suitable to the subcontinental countries, were accepted by the ICC. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Cricket is one of the many stick and ball games played in England 500 years ago. It evolved as a distinct game in the 17th century. In 1788, the Marylebone Cricket Club, published its first revised version of laws, which became the guardian of cricket's regulations. In Victorian England, the rich who played for pleasure were called amateurs or gentlemen, and the poor who played for money were called professionals or players. English team games like hockey and football have become international games, but cricket has largely remained a colonial game because it was mostly played in British colonies only. Cricket in India was based on race and religion in 1700s. In 1848, the Parsis founded the first Indian cricket club, the Oriental Cricket Club, in Bombay. Since cricket was organized on communal and racial lines, the first-class cricket tournament, called Quadrangular, was played by 4 teams: the Europeans, the Parsis, the Hindus, and the Muslims. India started playing Test cricket in 1932. Decolonization resulted in reduced influence of Britain in trade, commerce, military affairs, international politics, and sports. In 1970s, an Australian television tycoon, Kerry Packer, changed the game forever. He made it a marketable game to earn huge revenues. The ICC had to accept doosra and reverse swing bowling techniques more suitable to the subcontinental countries. ICC was no longer dominated by Australia and England,